But before they give us the gift of sharing themselves, we're going to ask you all to do some whakawhanaratanga with them, because it is a mutual and reciprocal relationship. What do you guys think? That's fair, right? We want to know who is in the audience. So I'm going to ask some questions, and if you relate to that question, all you need to do is just stand up, and these guys will get an idea of who is in the audience. Yeah? Does that sound okay? Cool, let's try this. All right. Stand up if you were born in New Zealand. Cool. Okay, you can take a seat now. Thank you so much. Stand up if you were not born in New Zealand. Nice. Just getting a bit of a flavor. Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Stand up if you believe in some form of religion or form of spirituality. Stay seated. All right, thank you guys. Thank you so much. Right. Stand up if you're a young person when you think you're a young person. Thank you, young people. Nice. Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing yourselves with us. You know, like people on the stage. It's a great idea of what's about to happen, so it's important. Okay, shall we get off, guys? How are you feeling? You're all feeling good? Can you go to mic? Fabulous. So this is how it's going to work. They have a set of questions which I will be asking them, and it will be a conversation. And at the end of the conversation, you will have an opportunity to ask them some hard questions. They'll be easy. But yeah, we're all on board. Great. Let's start with the first one. This is for each one of you. Please tell the audience and me a little bit about your background.
Well, the answer that I have written down to share with this one was the little tidbit of information that you gave at the start there, so I'm going to have to think on the feet a little bit. Originally, I was going to say that I moved to New Zealand from the States, and the thing that my family being my family and one other being the only Jewish community up there. Which actually I think I'll still keep my thing, but I'll just expand on it a little bit. I think that played a pretty massive role in making my connection to Judaism what it is. My parents were pretty keen on ensuring that we maintained a Jewish connection, so we would come down to Auckland once a month pretty much for services, and that was how we met a lot of the other Jewish families that we did, and that sort of made my relationship with my Judaism something a lot more intentional than I think it would have been otherwise, because it wasn't something you could just take for granted. It was something that you were hyper aware of, because it was the result of a 6-hour car trip squished in the backseat with my two brothers. There we go, that's something else about my family. I have two brothers and I'm a middle child. And those car trips were terrible. Not like that, but.
Thanks, Ethan. Oh gosh, this is so echoey. Kia ora, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's actually amazing. I really want to thank Phil of the Islands as well for organising this. So good, Father. I hope you're taking notes for next year. So, a little bit about background. Yeah, I was born in India, in a city called Chennai, in southern India. In fact, people probably don't know this about India, but India, Christians are 2% of the population of India, but in southern India we're much more. I think it's about 10% or so in Tamil Nadu, where I'm from. And so yeah, long-standing Christian family. And of course, I always like to point out to Europeans that there have been Christians in India longer than there have been Christians in Europe. So if you want to get the full story on that, you can come back and see me. would say is similar to you, Ethan. I think my lasting memory and my first memory of faith is actually going to Sunday Mass with my grandfather. And I used to go on a rickshaw back then, and the reason I remember it so fondly is it was also tied to my favorite food of all time, which was dosas. You can try dosa, you should. And we used to go and have a dosa immediately after Mass. But I remember those conversations because, yes, we worshipped together at church, but it was also about that connection across generations. And I think that that's very much something that is at the heart of all of our faiths, actually, is that we are faiths that have these long senses of family. I think even the idea of this being children of Abraham kind of gives that point out, doesn't it? So I think family is absolutely at the core of much of my faith. When I was a bit older, I kind of came to New Zealand. I was born in India, grew up in the UAE, where many of my friends came from all over the show. Pakistan, India, Sudan, all sorts of places, and obviously many of my friends were Muslim and Hindu. I was, I think, as far as I know, the only Christian in my friend group back there. And then coming to New Zealand, loved New Zealand, and I think partly because we are very much such a part of New Zealand, as those of you who stood up were migrants are such a core part of our story. As I kind of got older, I came to the point where I was at university, and one of the things, and by the way, here's your shocker moment here, in case I didn't put this in for you, sorry. So when I was about 19, 20, 21, that was when I started to realize that I was gay. In fact, I knew this before then, but this is perhaps when I started to accept that I was gay. And I think a core question that comes to any person who is gay, coming to terms with their sexuality, is how does this fit in with my religious experience? And I think the easy thing to do, and what many of my fellow members of the Rainbow community would do, is to say, well, this thing isn't really for me, I'm going to walk down with it. And I have to admit, Father, that I did try that, unfortunately, despite myself, and I think this is very much where faith comes into it, is you can't help but feel that this is such a core part of your life. And so I was very grateful that I found a place like Holy Trinity Cathedral where I was welcome and able to practice my faith in a way that recognized who I was as a whole person, and that God creates good things, and that we are called to be good. So I'll leave it there. That's faith.
Good afternoon, everyone. I was born in Turkey and raised in Turkey. We came to Australia, Sydney, when I was 11 years old. My surname is Ozuto, so Ozito.
Thank you.
Next time you remember that.
I will. That is easy to remember.
But I was saying that my grandfather was quite a visionary man. He must have somehow had a vision when we were coming to Australia. So he adapted the surname Ozito. But so I do my high school in Sydney, in Wollongong, Australia. And my dad was an imam in a mosque, and my mum was a Quran teacher, so quite a religious family and upbringing. My dad always used to say, look son, from an imam family must come out an imam. And he just programmed me like that. You learn from an imam. I was just programmed, so when I finished high school, I said, okay Dad, I'm ready, I'm programmed to become an imam. But you've got to go back to Turkey and study 4 years and come back. I have 3 siblings, I'm very close knit. I said I can't leave my family for those many years. Anyway, so I started pursuing all those things that you talked about, like engineering, commerce, etc. After 6 years, I found out what I didn't want to do. So all those degrees helped me to understand, okay, you know what, I don't think I'm going to do any of this. My last attempt was at the Master of Economics at UNSW. After a year, I'm like, nah, I'm going to decide that. So that's when I actually started to take up Master of Islamic Studies and did a few trips to Egypt. And I think I rediscovered my faith, to be honest, because I went to public school there. Even though I wanted to become an imam, but my faith was quite shaky, to be honest. Like I would just, the dominant culture at the time wasn't the best for my faith, I think. And so there was a few people I felt that God sent in my life where I really was able to rediscover my faith. And so ever since, like I've been involved with mentoring youth. Yes, I may not show my age, but the age has clocked a few kilometers. I'm a father of two, one 5 and 8-year-old boys who love wrestling and kicking each other, sometimes kicking me as well. So that's a good one.
Oh, that's beautiful, isn't it? So how many degrees is that? That's like 5?
They're not really important. So
I mean,
seeing my hex, I'm not too sure what it's like here. We call it hex over there. My hex account is about $90,000. So you can imagine how many degrees.
It's like $100 by the way. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, guys, that was amazing. And there's a lot in there, right? But the first thing that I just want to acknowledge is that typically when we do this with older people, you don't get so much authenticity. You get a lot more theology, but we're getting a lot of you guys today, which I just want to thank you for. And I hope the audience acknowledge that as well, because they don't have to share this much about themselves, but they are. So just a round of applause for their it's interesting, like I was born in Pakistan, but raised in Japan and New Zealand. And you're right, there's something about rediscovery of religion that happens when you're in other places, right? So all three of you covered that to some extent and linked it back to some level of connectivity with family, with friends, and just this kind of lineage of history that comes. So hopefully we'll dive into that a little bit more. But the next question, and this one is for all three of you as well, because it'll be important for our audience to hear that, is how does faith inspire you?
Sure, and I think something that I probably should have shared before is that I don't necessarily, or I think that a person of faith is I would consider myself not super religiously observant. And I think it's important to make that distinction because the way that I connect with faith and the way that it inspires me is more through a sort of like a cultural understanding, cultural belonging sense. So a lot of the way that I connect with my faith is just through the things that I've seen that are most present in like family life, not so much the connection that I have when I go to worship. Because as I was saying in my own before, it's not really something I do. But I'd say the big things that inspire me are having a focus on family and connection within my family. Like I mentioned before, we were the only, Jewish plus one other in my town. But more than that, and I'm sure you guys would have that similar experience when you move somewhere from overseas. The first people that you really get close with and that you have to rely on is your family because you don't know anyone else. I think that was something that was drilled into me even before we moved. In Judaism, such a massive thing is getting together for various holidays, so family's always been something that's really important to me. And I think as I've grown up and been able to compare my sort of values to other people's values, I realized that maybe more of that is due to my culture and religion than I would have initially thought. So I think that's a very important thing. I'd say another big one is this idea of tikkun olam, which is a Jewish value that means repairing the world, and it's the idea that every Jew has the responsibility to do their own little part to fix the world. And it's got like a really interesting story behind it, and very interesting theology behind it. But the way that it emanates in Mala is just that I was, again, brought up with this idea that you have a role to play in making the world a better place, whether it's just through being nice to other people, or whether it's through figuring out what your passion is and what you've got a flair for, and seeing how you can adopt that to do better in the world. So I think that's probably the other big thing that I sort of relate to with Judaism is, you know, just striving to do better, striving to do the right thing, striving to, you know, make sure that at some level I'm better in the world in a certain way. And again, you know, when you compare yourself to, you know, like to your mates and sort of look at like, what are my values, what are sort of your values, what are the ways that I make my decisions versus what are the ways that you make your decisions. Not that there's any right or wrong way, you know, but I think a lot of the rationale behind what I do subconsciously comes from this idea that like I do want to do better. I want, you know, everything that I do to result in something, you know, making the world a little bit brighter. And I think that comes from, you know, from the culture that I was raised on. So I'd say that's sort of the ways that inspire me.
Thanks, Ethan. That was a really thoughtful answer, one that I have to try and follow up. What inspires me, I think, for me, and this is just my personal experience of faith, is first of all, faith is about time and space and silence sometimes. I think you can often think that faith is, you know, kind of going on your point, that religious observance, sure, I mean, I do, you know, attend Eucharist every week and I'm very much involved in things, but I think if those outward shows are the only thing that make us some people of faith, it can end up being a bit of a performance. And I think actually it's often that 5 minutes or 2 minutes, you know, before or after the service where you're just having a moment of quiet in a dark church or even in your own home. You know, I was with on Monday night. It's great. I was telling you guys about this, and I think those are the moments where your faith comes to you, because it helps you to not freak out about the world, but go, it's okay, you know, I know which thing's true there and which things don't. Yeah. What inspires me as well?
I would be freaking out, to be honest with you.
Okay, maybe also partly my personality.
Yeah, that is a lot of faith.
No, yeah. Either that or maybe blissful ignorance or something like that. Yeah, it's okay. My fountain pens will come back one day. What I would say as well is, so faith inspires me firstly to do that. I guess that's a form of listening. I think also just to recognize beauty in the world. So yes, absolutely, I think we're called to build the world and make it more beautiful. But I think for me it comes firstly from saying the world is beautiful, even in the moments where it can seem really dark. That, and I think certainly for all of our Abrahamic faiths, there is that sense of, you know, God made the world and it was good. And I think in the same way for other people, that you go, fundamentally, people are good, even if they don't always behave in the way that they're called to behave, or certainly not me all the time either. So I think that's important too. Faith is, I mean, the inspiration is almost like a hope that people will live up to that calling for themselves. And I think, and then obviously, and I'm sure this is something we'll get on to towards the end, is action. That certainly, if you believe the world is good, and that includes us as people, then we have to respond and live up to that call of being good and doing good in the world. So I think those are the three things that
Nice. I think mine is more of building up on what you've been talking about as well. But I see faith as a light switch. So when you come, imagine this was dark here right now, we came in and the lights are off, and then you walk into the metal pole of it, try and make meaning of it, like what's this? But it's like you can't see. Then you tumble over a chair, you try to figure out, okay, what was this? Then you come across those glass panels and you hit your head and like, okay, so what is this about? So faith is like the light switch. So you turn it on, you come in, you turn it on, you can see everything. Okay, those are chairs, there's a electron there, these are beautiful human beings, there's patients listening to us, right? And so forth. So I feel that faith really switches everything for me personally. Like once I put those goggles on, I can see everything for what it is. And that really inspires me because I can give meaning to everything now. And I can live through the thick and thin of life. I know what happiness is and what it's there for and what it should serve me. I know what suffering is there for and I know what oppression is there for. So myself and a lot of people around me as well, especially young people, like the injustices we see that's in the world that we can't help, that we can't change, we can't fix. We get frustrated, we get angry. But how can you still be inspired, how to continue to do what you're doing? So in that time, he talked about how being burdened despite that, he was able to just sit down and be calm, etc. But sometimes this could be even more bigger things. It could be detrimental to your health, sometimes to your wealth, and other things. So I am able to give meaning to life and have a purpose through my faith, and that is a perpetual inspiration for me. And I continue with whatever I think is pleasing to God. So, yeah.
Wow, they're really inspirational. Hey, that's beautiful. Nice to have purpose, to see beauty, to constantly live up to improving yourself and the world around you. That's amazing. I'm going to throw a spanner in the mix because I think it's time.
It's all too neat.
Since this is going too smoothly, I feel like we need to bring you guys in. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the floor for one question based on what you've already shared, because you've already shared some really amazing gems. So I'm going to ask if someone has one really burning question that they want to throw their way. Anyone?
I think it was a spanner from the crowd as well.
Maybe he could just share some ways in which he's applied the principle of crying out.
There you go.
I like how the question from the audience was specifically targeted. Tikkun Olam is. Sure, so the question was, what are some specific ways that, and I'm actually going to open end the question a little bit to you guys as well, because Tikkun Olam is it's a Jewish value, but it's the idea is not something that's inherently Jewish, so it's something that you guys should do as well. But it's specific examples of the ways that we try and practice Tikkun Olam, or helping improve the world in our own lives. And I think for me, Paul probably asked this because he knows one example is one that has his name attached to as well. We do one cleverly called Tikkun Hayam, which means repair the seas. And it's this idea that, we've got this practice associated with one of our holidays called Tashbih, where you repent for your, you think back to all the sins you've committed over the past year, and you repent for them, and you cast them out, and you do that figuratively by taking a piece of bread and throwing it into the ocean, into the lake or the body of water. And there's this one rabbi overseas who came up with this idea of we should do the opposite, we should take our sins out of the water. So he started this program to marine conservation, pretty much of beach cleanups, lake cleanups, waterways. And I think that's something that, it's a very measurable, it's very clear the positive thing which you're doing to try and prepare the world, but it also has that added little element of, people can connect to it from a faith perspective, because it's a concept that's familiar to them. So I think that's one that's really cool, and also beach cleanups are pretty hip, and lots of people get it, One that I've personally done over the past year is restart the group called, I don't know about them behind me, called Aujas, that had, just because of the very small Jewish population here in New Zealand, it's the student Jewish group sort of comes and goes as there's as there's the manpower behind it, necessary for it. And, in what's been like a pretty difficult year for a lot of Jewish students, felt it was very important to give people like a sense of community again. And a place that, has the potential to not be super welcoming, to try and make it welcoming for them. So yeah, I'd say that's two examples of the ways that I've tried to practice to bring that in my life. Well, that's you guys.
I mean, I've been working with youth a lot, especially in the last 10 years or so. And I've seen young boys who really struggle with their various addictions or family issues, and they come through even like some suicidal thoughts. Sparing, I think for us the most valuable thing is time, right? People make money through time, people make positions through time, and re-establishments through time. So for each one of us, time is the most precious asset that we have in close. So it's always about, for me, I'm giving especially this competing things that's waiting as well at the same time. So you can only spare time for people, especially like I always try to make this a principle for myself. Whenever someone comes up to me, wants to talk to me, wants to needs something from me to sort out a problem, I try to make sure that I always make time for that person, regardless of who it is. I put time in my week or weekend or weekend. For me, that's been the most important thing in my life that I'm trying to do. Make sure that whenever someone needs me, I'm there for them. Something small, something big, but I've been able to use that. I found that very accessible because of that reason, and that's allowed me to be wonderful people. Something that I appreciate.
I think for me, I get it a bit easy in some ways. I mean, it's an equivalent, maybe not equivalent, but analogous. I'm just trying to think of what term would work. But to me, I think it's something between our vocation and our charisma. So vocation is what you are called to do, your charisma, and your charisma is what gift you have to give to the world. So I think between those two things is perhaps how we build the world to make it better. So for me, that has been teaching. I've always been involved in education in some form in my life. I think every job except one that I've had has been in teaching in some respect, in music, or now in English literature, and I'm running the university's foundation program. So that's for students who need an extra year of preparation to be prepared and able to access university, often coming from schools or communities where they have historically not had access. So I think while that may not be directly about my faith, I think certainly what I do is very much influenced by my faith. Kind of like what listening to it's the feeling that yes, you're running a program and you have to worry about budgets and you have to worry about X, Y, Z, but your faith is the thing in the back of your mind that challenges you to say that student's showing up at your door. It doesn't matter that you haven't got time to deal with them, you've got to be willing to just sit with them and not look at your watch. I think that's probably where that practice comes in. Attending to people in this moment.
So yeah, it's a good one, very similar to the vocation and also charisma. And I think that's actually something that makes the whole concept quite beautiful. And so to flip it back to you guys, the idea of being like, you do have something sort of special about yourself, something that you do particularly well. Your friends know that you're very good at that one thing, and thinking about the way that you can sort of turn that into your avenue to do better in the world, and not just be secretively really good, really passionate about this one thing, but find for me, I love the environment. I'm really passionate about the environment, and so involved with this idea of these Marine cleanups. So I was like, I think that I would do a great job at helping that be successful. So I think it's all about knowing yourself, figuring out good at figuring out what matters to you and learning how to flip that and turn that into something that can really bring light into the world for everyone. So yeah, exactly like you were saying, and I think it's something we're thinking about for everyone.
Oh, that's a beautiful project, isn't it? Just to figure out what your purpose might be and what you're good at. Next one is a bit of a curly word, you know that an outdoor is written in, so get ready. As a young person of faith, what do you think are the possible reasons that many of your counterparts are less inclined to participate in practices of organized religion? Maybe we can start with you.
I was actually in a conference, Islamic conference a few years ago in America. We did this massive conference with thousands of Muslims. And something that the research that struck me at the time, an academic was presenting, and she said that for every Muslim who comes into Islam, one person leaves Islam. And then for every person who comes into Christianity, 6 people leave Christianity. I think the patterns are somewhat similar here. But I never thought about these people leaving Islam until that point. So it really shocked me. I was like, wow. Because statistically, Islam is usually growing. But then there's also some leak in the bucket somewhere. And I eventually became interested in that, and I started doing research, reading papers, etc. There's research papers from America. I haven't seen anything done for Muslims in Australia. And I've actually read a book where an ex-Jew had written a book. He interviewed 82 people, ex-Christians, ex-Muslims, ex-Christians, ex-Jews, and they write down all the reasons. There's quite a few, whether it's philosophical, scientific, sometimes it's due to the people, like interaction with people and what they see through people, especially religious leaders, is one of the big ones in the research. We sometimes think, oh, it's mostly philosophical, etc. But what I could say is this, so this is not research-based, right? So don't quote this anyway. But just my own research and what I have gathered is, unfortunately, people have lost what value they receive from organized religion. So why would we follow something if we believe there's value in it? But there's all these challenges. My son tells me about Ronaldo's morning chores. Like he wakes up, gets a cold shower, and then goes to the gym, etc. He's into soccer, so that's valuable for him. He's watching YouTube videos. He's only 8 years old. But what does organized religion mean to us at the moment? What value does it carry? So I think a lot of us have lost, or maybe our leaders, religious leaders as well, haven't been, and that includes me as well, as a religious leader, that we haven't been able to show what value it has for people. As a Muslim, 5 times a day we pray. If people start seeing that as a chore, like, 6 a.m. this morning, you gotta pray. Tomorrow, we gotta pray at the same time. The next day, you gotta pray at the same time. You could be thinking, wow, like, come on. And Ramadan comes and we're fast a month, from sunrise to sunset. So these could be burdens and things, but once you start understanding the value, how prayer actually beautifies your day, it disconnects you from the material, you connect with God 5 times a day, you wake up while everyone's sleeping, and you actually feel your purpose, your heart is fed. Once you start seeing these things, you're like, oh wow, organized religion is actually beautiful, and I want to live my life this way. Right? But that's the main issue that I'm seeing at the moment in terms of why people, I guess, especially youth as well. Because I've seen youth, there's a lot of youth around me who are very attached to Islam, organized religion, and organized religion. I know a particular youth, he's in the mosque every morning. Whenever I go to the mosque, I know I'll find him there. Every morning, without fail. Right? organized religion once they see what's in it for them.
Thank you. That's quite powerful. I might shake some religious leaders to just hold on to your seats for a while, hey? That was great. That was actually really good value in organized religion.
I hope I get chased down there.
You won't. I know everyone here, so you're fine.
That's a really useful insight, and I think I fully agree. I will slightly throw it a bit back to the questioner in a certain sense, which is to say, you know, as I said, medieval literature, right? And I think one of the things about history is we always feel like we live in that special moment in history where things are truly different and somehow completely, you know, unprecedented. And there are certain ways in which that may well be true of our age, but it's only with hindsight that you will know if that is true or not. What I can certainly say is that if we look at the history of our faiths, you know, there have been moments in each of our faiths where we have been in power and had the majority, and therefore everyone follows along with you and does what you want and worships in the way that you please, you know, that pleases us, or pleases our religious leaders for that matter. And then there are other times where your faith is persecuted, or you have to be in the minority. You have to learn and find a way to practice your faith without, you know, and reinvent how faith is practiced in a new historical context, you know. And certainly, you know, Christianity, I must admit, has been historically very often on the side of power, and very often that power is exercised against other faiths, and in particular I have to recognize the Jewish people as well in that context. And I think in that sense, to me, the moment of history that we're in today is one where suddenly it's not that our faiths are fighting against each other to try and figure out which version of practice should be done, but it's in fact, this will sound quite scandalous to say, I once went back to Dubai, went into Dubai Mall, but check it out if you've ever been to Dubai Mall. Okay. You go into Dubai Mall, for those of you who don't know, it's an amazing building. I must admit that to me, the dome of that mall very much to me looks like a mosque. And I remember going with my friends, my Muslim friends in Dubai, and I was talking to them and I was saying, gosh, this is the mosque of today, you know, this is the temple of the church of today. Because we can say whatever we like, but ultimately it is mammon and it's cash that rules, cash is king here, right? And so I think then that gives us an opportunity, because it means suddenly we don't get to rely on power to convince people that this is something that's worth doing in life. You have to offer something more than that. And in that sense then, I think if we are trying to be the world, if we're trying to be entertainment, or if we're trying to be fun, even, you know, I know we talk about fun, and it is fun, right? But if we try to be those things, then look, there's lots of places to have fun that can probably do it better than we can. There's lots of places that can do entertainment better than we can. But what we can provide the world, and what faith provides the world, is space and silence. And I think especially in this age of social media and internet and just constant distraction all the time, having one place where you can be quiet and learn how to build up your humanity again, build up your ability to spend more than 15 seconds listening to another human being, that's a huge opportunity.
Those are both great answers, and significantly better than my answer that I have prepared, because I don't have it prepared. This was a question that I looked at for a really long time, and felt kind of guilty about the fact that I didn't have an answer, because like I mentioned before, I'm one of those young people in faith that doesn't really turn up and talk about all that often. And so I was thinking, you know, why is it that what is it that's sort of missing? I think that it's what both of you guys said, and I'm not sure how you fix those things and address those things, but I think once you do, then you get young people back and interested, because they are there for a reason. They're there for a reason other than to something that I don't have is something that doesn't really speak to me about services is reading from a book, reading prayers that were written over 1,000 years ago. How do I relate to that? But the answer is that there are ways that you relate to it. It's just a matter of figuring that out and spending the time to understand what that sort of connection is. Because once you get that, then you can get young people back into those spaces, and you're only going to get them. It's kind of counterintuitive, but you're only going to get young people into those spaces when there's young people in those spaces. But how you do that, I don't know. That's my answer and my question.
It's beautiful, I think, really. Thanks for being open. Like the 2021 survey in Australia showed that 30% of Australians, they had no religion, but they were not atheists. So they actually believed in something of a higher power, some sort of spirituality. They didn't tick the atheist box, but they ticked the no religion box. 30% is massive. It's 1 in 3. In fact, the projection is that it's going to surpass Christianity in 5 to 10 years. Right? The trajectory is there. So there's a lot of people interested about faith, but that's why they just maybe need to be shown ways to connect with their faith and organized religion. So that was beautiful.
Yeah, no, look, they're all really powerful responses and very non-traditional, which is good, actually. We're going to hear that. And I think as you were speaking, what I was reflecting on is the problem with the framing is that we think we needed to organize religion. And religion is something that you're all reflecting, something you live in any given moment in life. You know, it's not necessarily in a synagogue or in a mosque or in a church. It could be in your home. It is such a private thing in terms of connection to what you believe in. So thank you for that. I think that was really insightful, because what we're probably doing to some extent is thinking that organized religion requires us to be visible in certain places, and hence why we're concerned about, where people are or where young people are. I brought some young people along for this very reason, by the way. Cool. Okay, thank you. So, are you ready for your we're almost there. How are you feeling?
How are they?
How are you guys feeling? Just a little, still there, a little shook. And they might have some really hard questions for you guys, but all right. So this one's actually quite important because it's inviting your responses in terms of what are the most pressing issues for you as a young person of faith. Maybe you can start with the middle this time.
Pressing issues for me as a young person of faith. In what context? New Zealand, the world? I'll start here at home. I think, if I think of young people, and I'm very much at the upper scale of young person, I certainly get to surround myself with lots of amazing people, including our recently formed young adults group at Holy Trinity Cathedral. What I would say is, what's pressing? I mean, money is pressing. Cost of living is really pressing, right? And I think there is an element of saying, yes, we can talk in the lots of philosophical level about those things, but it's really hard to find time for other people, for your faith, when you're trying to pay bills. So I think, if I think of young people, I think that's a big part of it. I think the second aspect is probably the world. There is seemingly endless war going on in the world. World leaders seem to ignore the damage that we are collectively, doing to the environment. And it can, I must say, I think then the biggest challenge in that sense is the risk of hopelessness. And I can't say that I'm immune to that. I think sometimes you look at it and think, there is just no way out of this. We're going to keep, our society is going to keep tearing each other apart, and our world is going to keep burning. And faith is exactly what we at that moment were saying. We have to, despite all those odds, believe something else is possible. So, oh, that's I think those key challenges is actually the challenge for young people is to fight against that fear of doom. That there's no point trying. But I think again, history shows us that there are always moments of doom. And if there's anything about us as human beings that makes us boast in made in the image of God is precisely in our creativity and our ability to imagine something different.
I think that there's the one main issue that one of the main issues that I see as a young person of faith. I think this year has been a particularly eye-opening one for myself and many others. And I think it's a feeling of isolation. It's a feeling that other people sort of don't get you. Nobody understands my experience, kind of thing. I think there's two solutions to that. One of them is an internal one. One of them is making sure that you're creating spaces for the people who do understand you and do have that same experience to come together. And that's one of the reasons that it's so important for me and some others to get Altus restarted. Because you have a lot of people who, especially here in New Zealand, for people who don't already belong to the community, the community is so small that you're completely unaware of it. And so when you go through your day-to-day life thinking that you've got this massive weight on your shoulders and you're walking through university and looking at this is something I felt earlier in the year. You're looking at other people just smiling and carrying on about their day, and you're like, oh, I just don't understand all that.
What's behind the smile?
Yeah, it's true. But so making sure that there is a space for these people to come together, and it's creating. Looking at a friend here in the audience who's been super, had a massive role in organizing spaces for, our Jewish people our age that come together over dinner and just. You don't even have to talk about these things, but there's just this shared unspoken understanding that is such an important piece of things. I think the other one is that we don't talk to each other enough and reach across the aisle enough, and I think that's why what we're doing here today is so awesome. But when you in today's world, which is becoming more and more like a very secular one, religion and culture and practice and faith takes a back seat, and it becomes not quite a taboo subject, but just one that doesn't really get spoken about. And with that, things are lost in translation because you're not talking to people and people are calling you and going like, oh, actually, no, we actually do this, but that holiday is actually about this thing. And it just sort of it furthers this divide where people don't really know anything about the other person, and that also contributes to these feelings of isolation. I think our three faiths are a great example of three faiths that are different, but also really, really similar in a lot of ways. And I think if we do talk more and spend time in each other's spaces more, then that feeling of isolation also can be addressed like that. So yeah, I think it's that isolation that is one of the big problems. I think the other big problem is that people just get so much. I've written here so much tiny tidbits of unvetted information. And so you got your Instagram reels and your TikToks, and you see 5 TikToks or something explaining what Judaism is or what Islam is or what Christianity is, and then you go all right, so yeah, cool, I kind of get it. And you don't think anymore about it. You don't ask your Christian and Jewish, Muslim friends, and you build these prejudices, and then when these things finally do come to the surface, you're so far apart from each other's understanding of things because you just never talked about it with one another, and it makes it that much harder, climb out of that hole that you're dug and get back to talking face to face with people. So I think that's probably the biggest issues that we're facing today.
Yeah, question to myself a few times actually. What's the most pressing issue for me and perhaps some people around me? And to be very honest, I think it's living my faith. That, as you mentioned, the world unfortunately become very material at the moment, especially. And I consider myself part of the West as well, so when I say the Western world, I don't remove myself from it, but we're very material focused at the moment. And not that faith is against material, but then if material is your main focus, then faith really becomes secondary. So I find myself trying to live my faith as it becomes a big issue at the moment, big challenge, especially once you get to the wider community, wider society, because the norms are very different. And also I see a lot of youth struggling with that too. So with at university, when I was at university, faith was a taboo. Like no one spoke about religion, faith, unless they were like evangelical Christians, they were very obviously outright Christian, which is fine. But other than that, like as an average Muslim, you wouldn't talk about your faith to a friend. Like other topics, nothing gets taught at universities. But the work culture is too different as well. So you go to a work culture, and I feel that's very important because my faith informs my life, right? I learn justice from my faith. I learn mercy from my faith. I learn equality from my faith. All these things, if I can practice it, I can manifest it at the same time. My faith tells me to be just, even if it's against myself, even if it's against my family. So much of the greed and the wars and all these things that we see in the world, which unfortunately we can't do much here sitting in this room. We really can't change these things, can we? So, but then how do I continue as a person of faith? That's, to me, that's the biggest issue at the moment. And how do I help others also live their faith as well? Because I do believe that we watched the video of Fethullah Gulen at the start of this conversation. I am also someone who's inspired by Fethullah Gulen, and I know thousands of people, not personally, but around the world, who have been inspired. Just one person, he was a mosque imam in Turkestan, just literally giving talks in a mosque, and he changed people's lives in the way they lived their faith and represented their faith, not a way that the faith would clash with the society, but a way that the faith embraces the society. And now people who have been inspired by one person are in hundreds of countries around them, and they've established schools, dawah centers, and they've done all these amazing things. And just as we sit here today, in many other cities in the world, they're helping people come together once again. So I think that this is probably the most pressing issue right now, that we can actually go through these challenges and problems that's given to us because we're trying to practice our faith, live our faith, and help others as well.
I think, talking about organized religion, I don't think that the opposite of organized religion is your private, in-room, personal thing. Because I think if there's anything that unites all of our three faiths, it is that all of them have at their heart some sense of a community, whether that's the Ummah in Islam, whether that's the church. The church is literally the assembly of the people, or certainly as well, I guess, the home, right, in Judaism in particular, that feeling that, in fact, your home is the first place that you worship. So I think that sense of that, I think that's actually something that young people certainly want, is connection. We are desperate for connection in a world where we have every friend online, but how many do we get to interact with personally? We have every sense of wanting to share ourselves in the world, but every pressure to curate ourselves to make us seem like we're happy, or to make us seem like we're successful. We post our LinkedIn to say how great our day was, but we never post the day that we didn't quite good as well. Right? So I think when you get to do that, when you get to be your authentic self, not actually with yourself, but but the people who you can trust. So I think, in fact, the more that our communities can be religion in the sense of to link people together, which is the meaning of that term. Religio is the links between us, but less so the organized part, because I think the organized part can tend to, and as someone who's a high church Anglican, we love our organized religion, don't we? We put on a good liturgy, for sure, but I think if our liturgy was simply a performance, or if we simply got up and said prayers without that sense of intention and heart and belief and wanting to put it into practice, then it is just a show. We may as well put on the play.
So much to think about. How are you all feeling? This has been really heavy sitting here.
Sorry.
And also getting challenged, even though the questions weren't mine, but like, I mean, look, you've given us a lot to think about, you know, and what I meant by organised and the opposite of that is that that's what we're doing here. Okay, so we're not in a place of worship. We're not all of the same religion. Some of us actually might be here and don't really believe in any of the religions that are being represented here today, and that is totally fine. It's about how we build a unity to see everyone. So with that, how amazing were they? Let's give them a round of applause. I'm just so aware of the time. I'm just surprised none of you guys have like nudged me yet. So I'm just going to ask for maybe, given the time, 2 questions to the floor. Has anyone got any? No pressure if you don't, but if you've got questions for our wonderful young men.
This is mostly for our 2 New Zealanders, but I think Australia is probably similar. You guys have touched on this a bit. I guess, as we know, that New Zealand is getting more and more secular, and the world in general is, I think. How do you feel that New Zealand society treats people of faith? And like, what can New Zealand do to make it a better place?
Yeah, that was actually something I had written down originally, or not exactly that, but something similar to that. And I think that New Zealand is, in a lot of ways, and I should preface this by saying I'm not from New Zealand, I was born here, but I consider myself a New Zealander now. I spent more of my life here. And so if I say something that's like, New Zealanders are blah, 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 I'm talking about myself too, so it's not like pointing the finger at anyone other than, you know. I think New Zealanders are particularly scared of the unknown. Not scared, but like weary and kind of, there's also a little bit of tall body syndrome going on. So if there's something that New Zealanders don't really know about, and this person who they also is doing something that they don't understand is like pretty adamant about it, or pretty like, you know, really feeling themselves about it, then I think New Zealanders have that tendency to sort of shy away or look at them, you know, give them a little bit of a side eye. I think in a secular society, when people are, you know, very comfortable in their faith and you know, sort of wearing that on their sleeves, I think they can be looked at a little bit as old-fashioned. You know, also acknowledging that the current trajectory, you know, like you said as well, and we even brought the stats to back up, that we are moving towards like a more secular way. And you do sort of look at religion as a little bit old-fashioned. And I think when you have all those things together, then you kind of are giving a bit of a side eye to people with faith. What do we do about that? I think we just continue to have conversations, you know, and what I've written down before was that, and I wish I still had it written down, but I don't, is that if we can, you know, be more aware about why people, especially young people, are choosing to, you know, connect with their religion and realize that maybe it's not all things that are out of touch, but there are, you know, modern aspects to it actually have a deeper understanding of it, it sort of makes sense and be more relatable, then it becomes less of an taboo, less of like a other and less of an unknown, more of something that's sort of, okay, maybe that's not exactly me, but that makes sense. Like I get, you know, I can see why they're doing that. And yeah, that's probably helpful.
It's a great question. And I'm not entirely sure of the answer, except to say that I've found that it takes a little bit of courage on the part of those of us who do have some form of faith, whether that's fully practicing or that we just have a quiet moment once in a while where we do not engage with it. But still, I think it's courage, right? I find that in general, most people, when you share yourself and you're not trying to tell them who they need to be, they're quite happy to hear that. And perhaps that's speaking from the privileged position in the sense of Christianity in this country. And then I think that that's our duty as Christians then is to support other faiths to be able to practice their faith fully and to share that sense of, well, look, it may not look like what you want it to look like, but that doesn't mean it's not genuine. So I think it's actually more of a challenge for us rather than for society. I think the thing about the word secular is it can seem like secular means irreligious or anti-religious, but it's really more of a kind of neutral position as opposed to a country like the United Kingdom where you have an established church. So that's an opportunity, not an evil.
I guess in Australia it's not very similar. But the other reflected around in what can we do? Because history shows that other people want to do things for you. That's given unless you proactively engage. And I think we have to be confident that I have faith and be ready to also publicly also talk about your faith. What I mean by that is not to go and preach faith, but what I mean is find meaningful ways of engaging with the society through your faith. And I think, for example, some do a lot of Ramadan things. That's just one way of really showcasing your faith and raising awareness about Islam and Muslims. So I'm sure there's many other traditions in each religion that they can do that as well. They can engage in the wider society. So that, I think, for me, is a really important question.
I think a great example of something that sort of makes that easier that I've been seeing a lot of lately is on Instagram. You know, you have these little like factoids, infographics explaining some aspect of the religion, and like I said before, in highlighting, really focusing on the parts that are relatable for everyone. You know, so it's like here's this holiday that you probably never heard about before, and probably means nothing to you, except that a big part of this holiday is gathering with your family around the table and sharing stories about blah 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 blah. And it's like, okay, well, cool. I don't belong to that religion, but I get that. Like that makes total sense, and that makes that religion be just a little bit less not weird, but like a little bit less just unknown to me. And that's how you sort of break down those barriers that create.
Incredible, yeah. Thank you for asking that question. Thank you to all three of you for your response. I am quite aware of the time as moderator. I have to manage that. So I'm just going to wrap up here and please stay on stage, gentlemen. Could I invite our three volunteers, so the leaders who are in partnership together who want to thank our young people this evening. So Yalchana, Reverend and Naomi, if you could just come on stage, they would like to thank you for spending time with us.